Hi, thanks for joining me today. You may ask, what is an impresslit? This little heart on this card is made with an impresslit. It is a die cutting and embossing in one folder, and I will actually open this and let you see what it looks like. This particular one has a heart and it has a 4-leaf clover. The little silver edging is actually the die, so it cuts and embosses at the same time. This is the deboss side, I should say, and then this is the emboss side. And once you put your paper in and fold it and run it through your machine, this is what you get, this beautiful 3D accent piece. So it's approximately 4.5 by 3 inches, and I've actually cut paper to that. I actually like to use quite a heavy mixed media paper because it really can handle the embossing side of it, and it doesn't warp. I always spritz a little bit of water, and I'll show you this first one. I take my Sizzix Big Kick, the base plate and a cutting plate. I always like to run on a diagonal 4 times through, and voila, it's cut and beautifully embossed. You can actually use that other piece as a stencil if you like to. I just use a little picky tool to take everything out, and there you have it. Quite stunning. So I'm going to do one in this butterfly impresslit. I'm using Distress Oxide in antique linen, and I did forget to show these, but all the way through the rest of the video I will show you each color that I used. So I'm just using my dauber to lightly dab in that first section with the antique linen, and then I'm using the color called Weathered Wood, and again these are all Distress Oxides, and I'm going on the outer edge of the wing, and I'm trying to make sure that I get it right into the corners. Now I've already dampened this piece of paper and run it through the machine, and when it's finished, that's what it looked like. I have scorched timber, and I'm going to use this to deepen up some of the edges, and I'm also going to use it to darken the center of the body. So you can see what it's starting to look like, and then I'm just going to leave this in real time so you can see the edges are darkened a little bit, and then I just like to go over those raised details and accent them a little bit. I'm going to do this one to look like a piece of ceramic, like a piece of old ceramic, and I did not crumple this and crack it, but you can do that. So I'm using this ultra thick embossing powder and Distress embossing ink. And so what I do is I like to press quite firmly, but I'm also very careful not to destroy the embossing part of this, but I am making sure it's got really solid coverage, and then coating it with this double thick embossing powder. And it is actually amazing how wonderfully this sticks. And then of course you have to use a heat gun to melt the embossing powder. So I'm just letting it heat up a little bit first, and then I apply it to my butterfly, and it melts actually pretty quickly, but because it's so thick, I do actually like to really make sure it's molten and almost like runny, because I actually want to have a full coverage of this to give it that really glazed ceramic look. So I'm just like letting you see this in real time, that you can see how long this takes. And this is it finished, and you can see how beautiful and shiny it is. You'll notice also that once you've embossed it, it actually blends the colors a little bit together, and it's hard to believe that that's just a piece of paper. So next I'm going to do this heart, and I'm going to use this very vibrant wilted violet. Again, it's an oxide because I'm really looking for that. I love oxide. I'm looking for that sort of chalkiness. So I'm applying it all over, but I'm also being careful not to press too hard, and you don't need to because these colors are so vibrant. And I'm just going to add a little bit of this kind of burgundy hot pink wax, and only to some areas, and it's just once it's all glazed you'll actually be able to see the difference between the waxed and the unwaxed. And I'm going to emboss it with this antique linen, which is actually a glaze. It's a semi-translucent. So I'm using the embossing ink again, and I'm pressing, and I'm not pressing to get the embossing ink into every crevice. I'm just going to give it a very good solid coating, but it doesn't have to be into every crevice. And this is what it looks like, and you can see now why I use that really vibrant purple, because once you've put this antique linen glaze on top, it definitely changes the tone into a more antique tone. I'm going to now go in with some distressed crayons. I'm just going to pick a couple of colors. This is a peel paint, and the other one is peacock feathers. I'm going to first apply these. I just put a little bit, I scribble it onto the mat, add a little bit of water, and I'm just going to apply that into all the crevices. So anywhere that's not got the glaze on it, it's going to take right into the paper, but the paper will be protected by the glaze, the shaping of the paper, the embossing will be protected. So I'm just dabbing it off there so you can just have a look. And now I'm going in with walnut stain, and this is obviously quite a lot darker, and again I'm going to darken up some more. I actually like to use multiple colors. I don't like to just go in with just one color. There's more depth if you go with multiple colors. So this is a Sizzix luster wax. I love this luster wax. It is very it stays soft all the time, and it just is so smooth on your fingers. And I'm just going to rub it around the outer edge, and now go in with some black soot. Again, this is the distressed crayon, and now I'm going to really darken up this outer edge and right into the edge of the actual heart. Just dab off any dampness, and there you can see what it looks like so far. Not there yet, but it really is already looking quite beautiful. So I'm taking a gold pen, and I'm just going to highlight. Although I've used the gold wax, I'm now actually just highlighting the very top details of the flowers around the edge. And this gold pen is very metallic, so it actually ends up looking like a piece of jewelry. So I'm just showing you in real time. Very easy to do, but I'm just highlighting the very, very top surface there. So I've now got like a dual layer of gold, a softer gold and a very metallic gold. And there it's finished. It looks like it could be a piece of jewelry for sure. Love this. I do use this heart a lot. Then I'm going to show you a different technique with the 4-leaf clover. Again, I'm going to be using a distress glaze, and it is going to be the peeled paint. So there's the distress ink for embossing, and I'm not trying to get the ink into every crevice again. In fact, I'm going to be a little bit lighter here, so I'm really just rubbing the surface and then going on with this peeled paint embossing powder. These are, as I say, translucent glazes. You can see how much white is still showing through there. And once I've heated it to melt the powder, it turns a little bit stronger of a shade of green. They go a little darker when they're melted. And you can see it's still green with white. And I'm again using these crayons. This is black soot. This is a metallic one from Christmas called Tree Lot, and this is the vintage photo. I'm going to actually rub directly onto the piece, the impresslit, but I'm not rubbing so hard that I'm going to destroy the embossing. I've just put a little bit of water on my finger, just rubbing it in. I'll just show this to you in real time. So it's just literally a tiny bit of water, and rub it into all the crevices, and then you just, wherever it's been embossed is protected. Embossing is kind of like a block out in some way, so you just rub off the crayon, and there you have it. So I'll just give you a little bit of close-up of that. You can see how dark it has become in the background with all the black and the browns. Beautiful. And so this is the Sizzix luster wax in copper, and I'm going to go very lightly. I'm just trying to highlight the surfaces. The important part here is polishing. Let the wax dry for about 30 seconds and then polish it, and it gives you this beautiful sheen. Absolutely gorgeous. So now I'm going to do again a different method on these two medallions. I'm going to go in with this antique linen, I'm just going to, on the small one, highlight all the top surfaces, and then the salvage patina I will do the same on the larger one, just highlighting the surfaces. And then I'm just using a distress glaze to block out just where the color is. I'm not trying to block out the entire thing, so just where the color is, I'm protecting it with the glaze. And that distress glaze again just acts as a resist, but at the same time it's also protecting the colors that it is covering. So where it's white, not protected; where it's colored, the distress glaze. So I'm going to use aged mahogany, and seedless preserve. It's actually the most stunning color, the seedless preserve. It's one of my actual faves, that and the salvage patina. And I'm literally just covering, you can see there, so anywhere the glaze touched the white, it will leave the white a little bit, but it's just so minute. But it's one of the things that helps it to look like a tile when it's finished. So in this blue one, I went a little bit heavier with the distress glaze, and so there's a few more pieces of white. Drying this off with my heat gun. This is an important step before you do the embossing, because you actually want your ink to be dried before popping it into your embossing ink pad. So it's beautifully dry. And just show them what they look like. So they don't look that amazing, but of course the double thick, that's exactly what it takes to really turn these into eye-catching pieces. So I am still being careful not to destroy the actual embossing aspect of this, although having dunked them into the ink with water in it, they have lost a little bit, but it's not really that relevant, because with the two-tone colors you can still really see the shaping and how beautiful. Look at that. They really look like ceramic tiles. I love that technique. So next I'm going to do this white butterfly, which has been cut in the mixed media cardstock, and I'm using a distress ink this time in black. And I'm just highlighting all of the surfaces. I'm not sure if you call it highlighting when you're using black or low lighting. And I'm going to use a detailed black embossing powder. So my embossing powders are pretty much all from Rangers. Tip it off, and I tap it quite heavily, so I'm really just trying to get where the ink is. Here I'm just showing you how, if you have a few little bits and pieces you want to remove, before you emboss it, you just can take a brush and brush off any excess, and then heat with your heat tool. And again, what will happen with this embossing powder is it will act as a resist, and when I go over with watercolors, it is not affected at all. So there I've started with green and then turquoise. I'm just going to do a bunch of rainbow colors, and I'm not going to bore you with all my coloring here of all the different colors, but I go from light green through turquoise to blues, purples, pinks, and finally orange. And that's what it looks like. You can see how shiny the embossed area still is, but the color's bright and beautiful. I'm going to add a second layer on here. These are stickles. They're just a glitter inside of a glue. And I'm going to just, with my finger, smush stickles all over the wings, not on the body, but on the wings. And this is what it looks like when it's wet, and you can't really see the glitter as much, but at the end I will show you a close-up of the finished dried piece. But that turned out really beautiful, just so striking. Now I'm going to do two of these edge pieces. I call them edge pieces. You can use them for anything you want, but I often will use these down one side of a card or along the base of a card, or in mixed media I just randomly use them. So they're these long, skinny, you can get them, they come in two sizes. So this scallop design is there's a wide one, and that's a narrow one, and this one is the wide one of this zigzaggy design, and of course it comes in a narrower. So I'm going to first do one in metallic gold cardstock. This is a Tim Holtz cardstock. I'm using archival ink, because being metallic, a lot of inks will not really stick to it, and so metallic side goes up against the die cutting side, and when it comes out, it's hard to see on video, but there really is some black, and that really kind of pops the embossing. I have to say that these embossing folders, they really are very three-dimensional. They're not just one layer of dimension, they're very three-dimensional. So I'm going to now do one in plain black cardstock. I put too much water on there. I do spritz with water all the time, but that was a little bit extreme. And so this is the skinny scallopy one. You can see how they just pop right out so easily. I'll show it to you before I do any finish. Now this of course is one of the easiest ones. This is just using silver luster wax and nothing else needed, just silver luster wax. There it is. You can see how it looks. And of course I'm going to now buff it up, and I'll show that to you again, and you can see how beautifully shiny that is. So it looks really gorgeous, and you can actually see a lot of the depth. It's not just one layer, it's 3-4 layers. It's beautiful. And that's if I put it against the gold. And now I'm going to do another one, the exact same technique, but just so that you can see black background with gold on it versus the all gold of this one. And you can see how different the look is. And again, buff that up. This is an important step when you're using these metallic waxes, is you really do need to buff them. And I'll show you the comparison. So one is cut in metallic and one is cut in black, and then with metallic wax. I think they're both quite spectacular. So for the last one that I'm going to do here, I'm taking this burgundy sort of colored paper, and it's actually like a cardstock that's printed on the top, which means you can actually sandpaper the burgundy coloring off. This is also Tim Holtz paper, and you can see it's stunning just by itself. But here I'm just taking my block, sanding, and being very careful to sand all the way along the edges, and it's a stunning piece just by itself. You wouldn't even need to do anything else. But I'm just going to show you some options of things that I do. I take a watercolor marker, and here I'm just using a really bright green, and I'm just going to go over, and there's a yellow and then there's a turquoisey blue, and I just added a bit more green on that. And I'm not trying to get rid of all of the burgundy, so I'm going to have some of the colors showing and some of the burgundy showing, but you can see how it's taken to all the bits that were sanded, so you can see the color more clearly. And now I'm going to highlight with copper, and so I haven't buffed this yet. I'll show it to you. Pretty amazing. You can still see bits of the green, bits of the burgundy, so it's like a three-dimensional with an extra dimension. Put all these bits and pieces together. So I do actually go back and buff this copper one, and at the end you'll definitely see it's that little bit shinier. But look how beautiful they are. They're so amazing. It's just amazing to me how these work. I really love them. So now I'm going to do this leaf one. It's one of the ones that you get 2 for 1. I love these 2-fers. And it's hard to show you here, but the detail of the veins is unbelievable. Plus the leaves are kind of curved. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to color my paper first. I'm going to use this beautiful twisted citron. It's like a bright lime green. I'm going to add in some of this bundled sage, which is a very sagey soft green. And then I'm going to add this rustic wilderness. And then I always love to add a little surprise element. I'm using seedless preserve. I love to add either purples or pinks into my leaves. I just always do. So I'm mushing them around so that they're not too square. I'm just going to pick up color. I'm just going to fast forward this. I always dry between every layer so that my oxides don't get muddied. It's one of the wonderful features of distress oxides. And I'm just going to keep picking up. And now I'm going to do a second layer. I'm going in with peeled paint, mustard seed, and then I'm going to add a little bit more of the twisted citron just because I loved it so much and I wanted a bit more on. Again, adding some water, mushing around, and then picking up, drying between the layers. And I pick up all of the color that's on my mat. You can see if there's a little spot that's still white, I'll actually deliberately go in. I'll show you what I'm doing there and pick that up. So after a quick clean up and a dry, this is what it looks like before it goes in. I spritz the back of this and then I cut out the leaves, and you can see those gorgeous, gorgeous veins. But I will later on add a little bit of color with a white pen onto the leaves to really make them stand out. But beautiful, just absolutely beautiful. For this technique, I'm using the same leaf Impresslits, and I'm using Twisted Citron, Rustic Wilderness, and then this beautiful spiced marmalade. Show you the names of the colors if you're interested, and you can of course use as many different colors or any colors that work for you, but I'm just going with these three, and I'm actually just daubing them into the Impresslits. And because I'm using the dauber quite lightly, the veins will not have color in them. So a little spritz into the machine, out of the machine, and a little bit of vintage photo to complete this look. So I'm just going to add a little bit around the outer edge just to give it a little punch. And look, you can actually see how white those veins look. So this one didn't need a white pen. And now I'm going to show you these little wings. I've used this one a lot. It's unbelievable how detailed. You can see the feathers and all the little lines in the feathers. I have no idea how they create these wonderful things. I'm just grateful that they do. I actually bought every single Impresslits that exist, and I'm grateful that I did. So I'm going to use these 4 colors. I don't think I need to read them to you. And again, I'm going to create a background, a colored background first. So that we've got soft mints and soft blues, just very, very beautiful. And then I like to sometimes blend my colors, but I don't like to blend with white, so I want to soften these colors a little bit, and I'm using this, and I'm using Lost Shadow over the top of it to just push the color back. And you can see how soft the blues and greens are coming through that very pale gray. I'm using Scorched Timber inside of the Impresslits, and it's just going to highlight all of those details. It's going to push the dark color into the background of the paper, and then I'm just highlighting with this silver, this Sizzix Luster Wax. I'm being very delicate with this because I really just want this sheen on the very top details of all the feathers to show. Isn't that amazing? So I'm going to again use the wings, and I'm using prize ribbon, and this time I'm quite heavily inserting it into the Impresslit. I'm always going into the deboss side. I'm going to use antique linen just to try and take the whiteness away from that paper. And now I'm going to add a little bit of vintage photo around the outside edge. I forgot to show the vintage photo first, but I'm pretty sure I do show it. So this again is being very light and delicate. It's just to show, highlight some of those little details. Yes, there it is, vintage photo, Distress Oxide. And I'm using 2 embossing powders. One of them is Frosted Crystal, and the second one is Holographic, both by Ranger Ink. And I decided I wanted to really coat this with the double thick. So I just opened my bottle of embossing ink because I don't want to use a dauber and destroy any of the embossing. It does not seem to move any of the color around when you apply it. And then I've applied the embossing powder Frosted Crystal. So I think I said double thick, but it's a Frosted Crystal. It has a bit of texture to it. It also stays a bit tacky, a bit longer than some of the others. And so I can then add some of the holographic just with my finger onto the tips of the wings and details at the very bottom, just to add a wee touch of sparkle. And then of course heat set that again too. And that's what that one looks like. It's just subtle. It's not crazy sparkly, but it's definitely there. I love the whole line of these wings, just very elegant. Now I'm going to do this vintage frame, vintage looking frame. That's just a card that I had used it on before. And I'm just cutting it out of the plain paper again, the mixed media. And I won't bore you with all my coloring, but for this one I'm going to actually color because I want all those details to have pop. I'm just using this kind of old gold and it's a watercolor pen. It's not liquid enough to destroy any of the embossing. It looks really pretty when it's finished, but the halfway point, kind of not so much. And I'm just using this kind of leaf green. It is so, I would say, similar to the color peeled paint in the Tim Holtz. So once I finish the leaves, I'm going to use a lilac-y lavender color onto the little flowers, and then finally I use a bit of burgundy, and anywhere that hasn't been covered in the background I'll go back in with this kind of old gold. So that's what it looks like. So it doesn't look that vintagey right now, doesn't look that attractive right now. I decided that the green needed a little bit of highlighting, so I just popped a little bit of highlight onto each of the leaves, and then I used the Sizzix luster wax in gold, and I'm going to basically just be doing the background. I'm not trying to particularly get gold onto any of the flowers. So definitely looking a little bit better. And then I'm going to shadow in with this kind of dark grey. It's like a brownish grey. Again, I'm just shadowing into the depth to make the details pop even more. I'll just show you here in real time. You can just see me adding details where there's already some depth. And then I will use this lighter grey to just blend that out a little bit. And now I'm going to emboss. So the embossing ink, I'm not going to press too hard. It doesn't have to go into every crevice. In fact, I don't want it to. I'm using just a regular clear fine embossing powder. Heat treat it, and then walnut stain to add even more depth. So a little bit of water on my fingers, rubbing that right into all the crevices, gently though, and then rubbing off any excess. Where the wax was, then the crayon will not stick. So you can see it starts to look a lot more vintage. Now I'm going to detail it with a very metallic gold pen. So this is like two different layers of gold, a softer gold that is more widely spread, and then this very tip highlight, just the very tops of everything, where the frame is. I did not do the flowers again, and you can see how beautiful that looks. And for the final one, I'm going to be using Uncharted Mariner, and I'm going to put the color directly onto my cardstock, and then Chipped Sapphire, which is a beautiful kind of almost pure blue, a darker pure blue. And the first one has a little bit more green in it, and then this blueprint sketch has a little bit more purple in it, and making sure that the page is basically covered, and spritz with some water, let it dry. Now I'm going to go in with distressed ink. Some added black ink on the inside of the embossing folder, and now I'm going to use stickles. This one is called Crystal, and I'm just putting it on the very top surfaces, so here you can actually see what I did there. Finish that off, show that to you. I will be adding jewels to these, but the stickles has to dry. This is a diamond stickle, and it's got more of a gold tone to it, and so you can see it makes the two pieces look like they're made out of different color paper, but they were not. They are the exact same. I will be adding jewels to these. They're jewels that I bought for your nails, actually, from the drugstore, and one half of these sets is Aurora Borealis, and all in different sizes, and the other side is plain crystal. Really good quality. So let me show you all the little pieces. That's the black with gold wax. This was done with the gold metallic paper. This is black with silver wax. And then this piece is the burgundy that I used different colored watercolors on, and then copper wax on top. You can see the sparkle a bit better here. It's very subtle because I didn't put it all over the place, but it looks really pretty. And of course the embossing powder has also added strength. So if you're doing a piece like this one that doesn't have embossing powder on it, it's better to not put it in a spot where it's going to get crushed. But really beautiful details. And then the two that look like tiles, ceramic tiles, look very authentic. I really love those pieces. 4-leaf clover and the heart that were in a set together. The 4-leaf clover has a very subtle sheen with the copper metallic wax. I didn't go overboard there. And then of course this heart that looks like a piece of jewelry. You can actually see the oxide where I did not use wax on the reddish kind of part. Multicolored butterfly, rainbow butterfly, and you can see the sparkle. I did not put it on the body there. This is another piece that looks like a piece of ceramics. You can actually crack all of this double thick. You can actually crack it and add color into your crackle if you so desire. I did not, but you can. This little vintage looking frame, I love that. It comes out so beautiful every time, no matter what I do with it. Then these are the leaves that I put the color into the Impresslit, so the veins of course stay white because I didn't push it right in, and so the veins didn't have any color on them. This one I colored the paper first, so of course I had to use a white pen to pop those veins. But look at the dimension and look at the detail, and they actually have a curve to them too. They're just really exquisite. And then finally the snowflakes that I did indeed put tiny little jewels onto. I thought that they looked gorgeous. I've done these in pinks and greens and blues and blacks and all kinds of light shades and vintage shades and funky modern shades. So thank you very much for joining me today. I hope that you enjoyed watching today's video.